Let's take a look at Madden 27 versus Madden 26 side by side. We're going to look at graphical improvements, player movement, gameplay, some features, and more. Starting with the team introductions. Now last year they made a lot of upgrades, but they took it even further this year. On the left you could see is 26, on the right is 27. They added a lot more, especially to the big game feel for primetime games. I mean, look on the right, some of these almost look like they could be real life clips. So the graphics got better here, but you'll notice on the left it's already over. Jumping over to the right, the introductions are a lot longer, especially for the big games. You're going to notice more fireworks, more pyro, more special effects, better cutscenes and things like that. So they really took what they did last year and extended on it, as we're showing another example here with the Seahawks. You'll notice that the ones this year just run a little bit longer and they have a lot more details mixed in. Now, of course, there's still some things that they share, as you can see with the Seahawks, Marshawn Lynch raising the number 12 flag. So they did keep some of those elements and just continued building on it. But I think really the thing that stands out the most to me is the lighting, the lights in the crowd, the drone shows in the sky, the fireworks. There's more mascot involvement, and again, just more cutscenes, making them go a little bit longer because the introduction should feel special. So they really, continued upgrading this year. The Jags are another great example. The last one I'm going to show here for the team introductions. They added some more tradition this year with their mascot actually coming down from the rafters, whereas last year he didn't do that. He was just kind of on the field. So this is another great example. When you look at the shots, you look at the traditions, just look at the lights in the crowd. This feels like a big game, and I really like that they've continued building this out, and it's definitely one of the areas that 27 is for sure better than 26, as you could see right here. Now, sticking with introductions, let's look at the Super Bowl introduction. Now, this one didn't change a whole lot, but they did add some new things. You could see the opening shots with the flag and the aerial shots of the stadium. I really do like that. I think that was a nice touch that they added that on to the beginning, because that just feels like the Super Bowl. That's what we're used to seeing. And you'll notice that there are a lot of similarities with the Super Bowl introduction, but the one this year, kind of like the other team introductions, are a little bit longer. There's a few new shots in there. There's some different angles. There are some shots that are similar or the same as well. So I would say, it's about 75 to 80% the same, but they did just kind of touch it up a little bit, add a few extra details to it and make it a little bit longer, which I'm fine with. I don't think everything needs to be completely redone start to finish each year. If you have something that looks good, that looks like the Super Bowl, I don't think you have to completely tear it down and redo it, but it's nice to add on to it, or, change up a few different scenes to make it feel at least a little bit fresh. And I think that's what they did this year. You just kind of build on what you have. I think that's something that EA should do more of. Build on what you have, make it better, instead of just removing things altogether and changing for the sake of change. But then we get to the Super Bowl celebration. Now, this one is mostly the same. I would say it's about 90% the same. Now, this is one of the ones, I'm going to contradict myself. This is one of the ones I do think you should change, or have multiple ones each year. They did change the Gatorade a little bit. It does look quite a bit better this year. Still looks kind of funky, but last few years it just looked like slime. This year it looks a little bit better, but a lot of the scenes are going to be the same. You're going to see a couple different cut scenes in there. You're going to see a few different angles on some things. You've got a different player walking out the Lombardi Trophy, but like I said, about 90% the same. This is one of those things, I think, because winning the Super Bowl is so special, they should have a few different kind of alternating celebrations, so you're not constantly seeing the same ones or ones that are too similar. I do believe this year the confetti is the team colors of the team that wins, so I think that is a slight new addition as well, but overall mostly the same here. Now let's look at the weather, because there are some pretty big differences here. Now on the left is Madden 26's light snow. On the right is Madden 27's light snow. So in 27, the light snow is quite heavier than last year. Now when we go to the heavy snow, you're going to notice they dialed it back quite a bit this year. Last year it was one of their big selling points, how heavy the snow was, how foggy it was hard to see. And I think maybe they realized it was just a little too intense, because you really could not see any of the players for the most part. So it looks like they did dial that back quite a bit this year. However, we do now have dynamic weather. So with dynamic snow, you could see throughout the game the snow will be heavy, and then it can lighten up. You could see here, no fog, no snow. Later in the game, it's snowing heavy yet again, and then of course it stops yet again. Here's a sideline view during a snow game, mostly the same, but you will notice some of the players in a snow game will wear ski masks on the sideline now, so that is one small change there. And a detail I really like this year is in snow games, you'll see that snow can actually get stuck on the players' jerseys. It can stick to their bodies, which is a nice authenticity detail for those weather games. Now going over to the rain, on the left is the light rain option from 26, on the right is the light rain from 27, so it does look a little bit heavier this year in 27 for the light rain option. Then as you go to the heavy, kind of similar to the snow, you'll see it's a little bit less foggy this year, so they kind of dialed that aspect of it back a little bit. Here you'll notice the rain on the jerseys. This year you'll see it gets a little bit more wet and a little dirtier, but otherwise not too much of a difference there. For the helmets, you'll notice that it does seem to get a little bit more wet as far as the helmets are concerned, but it's not a crazy difference either. Now looking at the dirty jerseys that you get when you play outside on real grass and in the rain, you'll see that they did make some changes again this year. It's not as dramatic as last year. I do think it looks quite a bit more realistic this year. Not a massive change, but last year at times it would get a little bit too crazy, so this looks just a little bit more appropriate in my opinion. Hey, if you're still here at this point of the video and you haven't subscribed, you might as well go ahead, subscribe, join the family. That way you're up to date with all the latest Madden news all year long. It really helps support the channel a ton, and you can always unsub at any time. Now let's go over to player likeness. Of course, Caleb Williams, the cover boy, had to get updated this year, and you'll just notice whenever they update things year to year, the graphics tend to get a little bit better, lighting tends to get a little bit better, but you'll see he looks a little bit more updated. Also, Jackson Smith-Njigba got his update after cutting his hair. He looks a lot better this year as well. Shador Sanders, one of those guys that didn't have a scan last year, now has his face in the game. Then you look over to Cam Scatterbu, another player, for example here. No face scan last year, but this year his likeness is on point. Looking at a few rookies here, just so you can see graphically what things are looking like there, we have Mendoza. Then we've got Carnell Tate. I think his scan looks really, really good. He's got some pretty good graphics going on here. I mean, every year they get better and better, and it's one area that Madden it definitely does better than other sports games. It seems like they're always on top of their graphics. You can see Kai Lemon there. Then just looking at some top players here, we have Justin Jefferson. It feels like the players look older this year, at least in the menus. I think it's just the lighting and the contrast is a lot higher in the menus this year, so you'll notice players, in my opinion, look a little bit older, but just wanted to give you a side-by-side look. They also made some big improvements in the equipment authenticity. You could see they finally have shortened the pants to look more like what players are wearing in real life. You'll notice they added a lot of new equipment like the hanging mouthpieces. They shortened the shoulder pads down a little bit. They made the helmets bigger with more tilt. So now the proportions on these players look a lot better top to bottom. They look more in line with what players look like in real life. You could see some helmet comparisons last year versus this year. They just fit a little bit better. They're sized up more, tilted forward, a little bit bigger. I still think they could get even a little bit better in this department, but a lot better than what last year looked like. And even practice mode got some authenticity updates, as you'll see players with Guardian caps, different color visors, different color mouthpieces, rolled up jerseys to look like how players look like in real life practice now. And here's a coach side by side. I don't really notice much of a difference here. Obviously just changed some clothing options a little bit, but for the most part looks about the same as last year. Here's a look at the crowd side by side. I don't feel like this changes too much year to year. However, this year it does look like on the right for 27, it is a little bit better. They're varied more in what they're wearing. A little bit more colorful in the crowd. Last year, a lot of white you're seeing on a lot of the shirts and stuff like that. So I do think the crowd looks a little bit better this year, but overall not a huge difference. Sidelines are pretty much the exact same. You've got some real players, some generic players. Still one of those areas I think needs a lot of work. The one difference, which is funny, is on the towels. You can see that there's Gatorade logos on the towels this year, so that is the one minor change. Now when we go to the main menu is mostly the same. I will say this year one thing I like is whatever your favorite team is, you'll get a bunch of different highlights in the background from past and present, whereas last year you kind of just got the same generic one. So I do like that touch with the menus this year, but otherwise I mean they're basically the same layout. The team pick screen is a little bit better this year. Same layout, except now you will also see kind of one of the top players from each team when you are selecting teams, which I think is a nice little extra. Here's the franchise team select screen, the exact same as last year, which I think it's fine. I like the way it looks, but no changes there. Now the franchise UI did change quite a bit this year. There are some parts of it that look similar. Here on the home page, you kind of can use the right stick to access some different info, but there's no longer kind of that menu on the left. And then you've got the weekly hub, which is very different. It serves you information. You also got the little ESPN type ticker at the bottom there. This is where you do all your contract negotiations, deal with your player persona, and all the new stuff that they added there. You've got your coach screen and things like that. So a big UI overhaul and just franchise overhaul in general in terms of how it runs with that persona engine. Here's a good example with the contract negotiations last year. You just had the 4 basic options, and then you could do a custom option. This year you offer a contract, and then it kind of puts you in a bit of a mini game where you have to actually negotiate. Now, I do like this change where it gives you different options of what you can do to try to negotiate with a player, and your goal is to get his interest level, as we jump over completely here to 27. The goal is to get his interest level to 100% before his patience hits 0, which I kind of like. Last year, it was very cut and dry to re-sign a player. This year, they've kind of made it more of a little bit of a game, a little bit more fun in my opinion. I like what they did there. Here's a look at the player card in franchise. Now, I will say I do like last year and all the previous years where you saw the actual player in the player card. I don't like that they removed that. You do get more information surfaced to you this year with the persona stuff and all the other things, which I think is good, but wish they still had the player actually animating in the card. Now, let's look at player movement, and I will say last year they sped the game up quite a bit. It was one of the more noticeable differences. This year, it pretty much feels about the same as last year. I would say the movement maybe just the slightest bit tighter in changing direction, but otherwise, I mean, it's the same as last year, which I don't think is bad. I still think it could even be just a little bit faster than it is, but glad that they at least made it, faster than it was last year. You're seeing the double juke, still the exact same. All the ball carrier moves still seem to perform about the same as last year. Speed overall, about the same. Now, the route running did change just a little bit, but not a lot. Last year, they did good work with changing this. What you will notice this year is the elite receivers with route running really do create more separation, and they cut a little bit sharper. That is really the one main difference. Jumping over to 27 here, we have to talk about timing-based catching. You can now green your catches in the meter if you choose the option. You can turn it off if you want, but by turning it on, if you green your catches, you have a much higher chance of coming down with them, especially the 50-50 balls, which I think is a good addition. Whereas last year, you could see there is nothing to time. You just kind of leave it up to the game, and winning 50-50 balls a lot harder last year. So this year, with timing-based catching, you have a better chance to get them now. And looking at some throwing animations here for Cam Ward. Now, last year, they did a lot of work to kind of get QBs more signature throw animations to look like they do in real life. They might have made some slight minor tweaks this year, but overall kind of just building on what they did last year. Now, if you want to see all of the player likeness and authenticity updates that the game added this year, make sure to check out this important video right here on the screen.